Why do you feel that violent jolt of falling right before you fall asleep, as if your soul were being ripped from your body? And how is it possible that people on entirely different continents report walking through the same corridors of an empty, terrifying mall during the night? I'm going to prove to you right now that your dreams are not hallucinations inside your head, and that there is a precise destination where your consciousness is dragged every time you close your eyes. You turn off the light, lie down in bed, and surrender control of your mind. You have believed your entire life that the next 8 hours would be nothing more than biological rest, a mental house cleaning where the brain organizes memories and takes out the trash. You were taught that sleep is a locked safe, a private territory where no one else can enter. That is the oldest and best-kept lie in the history of humanity. We had access to the results of a classified research project that analyzed the largest and most complex mountain of data ever gathered about the human mind. At the center of this overwhelming investigation is Axiom, a state-of-the-art analytical artificial intelligence. Cold, fearless, and utterly incapable of lying, it swallowed mountains of brain scans and neural mappings collected in clinics all over the world. What this tool found in the depths of our minds should be the greatest scientific milestone of our era, but it ended up becoming a terrifying sentence. If dreams were merely a creation of your subconscious, they would have to be unique. Your dreams should be as singular as your fingerprint. However, when the patterns were cross-referenced, the machine did not find the expected creative chaos. It found thousands of precise coincidences, analyzed two completely different people. A 30-year-old programmer living in the United States and a 60-year-old housewife living in the countryside of Russia. They have never seen each other, but on the exact same night, both of their brains generated identical electrical activity. They both described being lost in a gigantic, endless shopping mall. They walked on the exact same dirty beige ceramic floor with tiny black dots. They saw the same escalators ascending into a dense, milky fog. The aspect that changes everything is that both listened to the same slow, distorted music playing in the background, feeling an overwhelming sensation of being watched from the dark store windows. The chance of two isolated minds creating the exact same illusion is 1 in 300 billion. We are not just having similar dreams, we are consistently traveling to the exact same places. The dream space is a shared environment with a fixed geography. The infinite mall is merely the beginning of this map. Beyond the mall, the data mapped the White Station, a colossal transportation terminal that resembles an endless airport surrounded by immense windows looking out into a thick mist. People wait for flights that are never called. It is in this liminal environment that the living report encountering deceased loved ones, sitting in chairs, patiently waiting for some kind of transition. At the borders of this map rests the infinite library, a suffocating labyrinth of shelves plunging into darkness, filled with indecipherable books or books that contain your entire biography, including the precise day of your death. This dream world exists independently. It remains there, operating in silence even when you are awake. How does this connection happen? The answer explains one of the most universal phenomena you have ever felt. Remember that instant when you are almost falling asleep and your body gives a violent jolt. You wake up startled, gasping, feeling like you are falling. Medicine calls this a hypnagogic jerk and says it is a reflex from our ancestors who slept in trees. The meticulous analysis of these nocturnal jumps revealed a heavy truth. That violent jump in bed masks a failure in your crossing to the dream plane. It is the precise instant your essence tried to detach from the physical body to enter this shared web, but something blocked the path. The agonizing sensation of falling is the literal impact of your consciousness abruptly returning to the gravity of your bedroom. When you finally manage to make this passage and enter the deep sleep phase, your eyes move at a frantic pace beneath your closed eyelids. Science says you are simply observing landscapes. However, the pattern of these movements is focused and frenetic. Your mind is conducting a dense exchange of information with this invisible plane. Every single dawn, while your body rests vulnerably under the sheets, you interact with an immense place. And what walks by your side through those endless corridors is what we are going to unravel right now. You know this feeling. 1/3 of the people in the world have felt it, although the majority prefer to keep it a secret for fear of sounding crazy. You are sleeping peacefully, and suddenly something pulls you from the depths of your mind. You open your eyes and you are in your own bed. Everything seems normal in the room. The outline of the wardrobe, the street lamp light coming through the crack in the window, the distant noise outside. However, the air is different. It gets dense, heavy, making your skin crawl in an unnatural way. You realize with a chill down your spine that you are not alone. In the darkest corner of the room, where the shadow is thickest, there is a standing figure. Instead of a familiar face or a common threat, a completely dark and faceless silhouette watches you from the corner with an unbearable weight. You try to scream and your throat locks up. You try to run, but your body is completely paralyzed. Doctors give this the name of sleep paralysis. They claim it is just your brain waking up before your body hands back control of the muscles. They say the figure in the corner is a figment of your terrified imagination, trying to justify your lack of movement. That is a very comforting theory, but it crumbles when we cross-reference the real biological reactions. The brain activity scans of thousands of people facing this exact same paralysis show that the areas responsible for creativity and imagination remain completely inactive. Instead, the area that fires up is the primitive survival center, the hunting alarm, the one that activated when our ancestors sensed a real predator hiding in the dark. Your brain is not inventing a figure. It is detecting a concrete, autonomous physical presence invading your nocturnal space. These intrusions are not random. They follow a dark and widely documented hierarchy, and at the base of the hierarchy are the Watchers. They are those two-dimensional figures that usually stand near the head of the bed. They rarely attack, as their primary function is simply to monitor. Their presence is so black that it seems to absorb the little light in the room. When you wake up paralyzed, you have stumbled into the middle of a silent patrol. You are seeing beings that were not shaped to be seen by your human eyes. One level up, we find a denser and more dangerous presence, reported by millions of people across the decades. The Guardian frequently described as a very tall man wearing a long overcoat and a dark, wide-brimmed hat. People from completely isolated cultures, children from rural regions, remote tribes, they all report the exact same clothing. This is not a cultural coincidence. It is an unalterable visual pattern. He approaches, leans over the bed, and in some cases touches the paralyzed person. The victims describe this touch as a static shock of absolute cold, because he actively feeds on panic. Your paralysis and your terror are the perfect sustenance for this entity. When some people try to speak to him mentally to beg for help, the response they receive in their head is usually a low laugh that makes their bones vibrate, accompanied by the express order to go back to sleep. At the top of the predation chain rest the attackers, also known in folklore as the witch. It is that malicious invisible force that climbs onto your chest and tries to asphyxiate you without mercy. Biosensors confirm that the pressure on the chest is not a delusion. The victim's body works desperately to expand the lungs against a real external force that weighs around 30 to 40 kilograms. These are low-vibration entities, opportunistic predators that hunt emotionally and physically exhausted people in the middle of the night, prowling the edges of that immense, shared labyrinth of dreams. The origin of these intruders defies the laws we know. Evidence points out that, during deep sleep, the brain's frequency tunes in with dimensions that are constantly overlapping ours. They live here on the same streets, sharing the same houses, but we only bump into them when the barrier of our perception gets thin enough during the nocturnal crossing. The shadows would simply be the visible projection of their forms in our reality. Visual contact with these beings is increasing drastically, escaping into the moments when we are awake. Pets growl at empty corners of living rooms, and security cameras record abrupt drops in temperature, exactly at the points where victims feel chills. The definitive advice extracted by Axiom, after mapping thousands of flight and survival patterns, goes against all of our instincts to fight. If you wake up paralyzed and realize the air has gotten heavy, do not try to force your muscles. Despair strengthens the entity. Above all, do not look directly at the figure in the corner of the room, because the gaze establishes an invisible bridge of energy. The only true defense is mental indifference. Pretend there is nothing there. Do not react. Let them lose interest and save as much of your attention as possible for the deadliest class of all, the recruiters. They assume the faces of your deceased relatives and appear with peaceful smiles, reaching out a hand to take you to other places. Those who accept this invitation holding hands rarely wake up the next morning. The passage of time deforms these journeys, and the clock near your bed hides a secret much more painful than you imagine. Look at the clock on your wall or on your wrist. The second hand makes that mechanical and rhythmic jump, dictating a pace you learn to accept as an unquestionable truth. We were taught from a very early age that time is a continuous current, a straight line that flows at the same speed for all people, whether they are kings or beggars. Yesterday is already left behind, today is happening at this very moment, and tomorrow is a distant promise. But every single night, when you lay your head on the pillow and hit the snooze button on your phone asking for just 5 more minutes of rest, you silently break the most fundamental law of physics. In those miserable 300 seconds of real time that pass in your dark room, you close your eyes and live a true odyssey. You walk through entire cities, run from threats through the streets, have dense conversations with people you have not seen in years, and sometimes even experience intense relationships. When you finally wake up, feeling like you spent hours outside your body, you look at your phone screen and realize with astonishment that only 4 minutes have passed. Traditional science tries to calm this confusion by saying that it is just an illusion created by your waking brain, a simple compression of disordered memory. The interval of those 5 minutes reveals a darker mechanism. Time in dreams operates as a tangible physical dimension, running at a ruthless speed and entirely detached from our reality. The hospital records of patient 804 reveal a temporal anomaly. A 35-year-old man who suffered a severe accident and remained in a deep coma for 6 days. When he opened his eyes in that hospital bed, he looked around and did not recognize his own wife sitting next to him. He began to cry desperately, calling for 2 children he never had in real life. The deep analysis of this man's residual neural activity, processed relentlessly by Axiom, revealed a picture that defies sanity. During those 6 days in our world, his consciousness was subjected to an extremely distorted time coefficient, and he lived 40 entire years on the other side. He met a woman, built a house with his own hands, worked as a teacher for decades, and watched 2 boys grow up until they went off to college. He felt his own body age and saw the leaves of the trees change color over dozens of autumns. And when he finally died of old age there, he woke up here. They took away 40 years of consistent memories, an entire family, and a complete life from a man's mind, only to tell him that it was all a delusion. The detail that silenced the doctors is that the synapses in his brain had physically changed. He woke up mastering technical details of carpentry and woodworking that he had never studied or read about in his waking life. It is biologically impossible for a human brain, made of flesh and electrical impulses, to have enough strength to generate 4 decades of rich, detailed experience within a 6-day window. Our body's chemistry cannot withstand that level of acceleration. The clear conclusion is that your mind is not creating these worlds from scratch. It functions as a powerful antenna tuned to a much larger environment, where the passage of time obeys rules of an entirely different gravity. This becomes even more undeniable when you experience the alarm clock paradox. You are in the middle of an incredibly tense dream, perhaps hiding in a guarded building. Suddenly, a siren begins to blare loudly and echo through the corridors, making your heart race. The story unfolds around that deafening noise for minutes until you wake up and realize the siren was just your phone ringing on the nightstand. The real sound invaded your dream, but how did your mind build a long, complex story to justify that alarm even before it rang in the physical world? The brain did not read the future. At the exact same instant, the sound hit your ear. The environment injected retroactive memories into your consciousness. It created 5 minutes of a false backstory and planted it in your mind instantly, just to ensure you would not question the scenario and break the illusion you were immersed in. We are thrown into these accelerated simulations to accumulate pure emotional experience, living micro-lives every single night to test scenarios of survival, pain, and loss. But this nocturnal journey exacts a heavy toll on your body, creating a phenomenon called temporal wear. You certainly know young people who carry a deep, exhausted look in their eyes as if they were ancient souls bearing an invisible weight. If you sleep for 8 hours, but your mind processes the equivalent of 24 hours of fear and tension, your internal clock ages at an accelerated rate. We wake up exhausted, with heavy muscles and a clouded mind, not because the mattress is bad, but because we spent too much time over on the other side. We return to this reality feeling the brutal impact of crossing the veil, carrying the invisible scars of a time that should not exist. If you can live an entire life and age 40 years in just a few days with your eyes closed, a cruel doubt should accompany you from today onward. Who guarantees that these limited 80 years you call real life are not just a 3-minute nap of another version of you, breathing peacefully in a much vaster place? You walk into a coffee shop for the first time in your life, on a street you had never set foot on before. The smell of roasted coffee fills the air, and you take a step toward the counter when you hear a small snippet of conversation from the next table. At that exact moment, a ray of sunlight cuts through the window and illuminates the edge of a wooden table. Suddenly you freeze, your hands break out in a cold sweat and your stomach drops. An electric shock of absolute recognition takes over your body. You have the indescribable and terrifying certainty that you know precisely what is going to happen in the very next second. You feel that the woman sitting to your right is going to drop the metal tray on the floor, or that the phone is going to ring with a very sharp noise. And then, exactly as your mind predicted, it happens right before your eyes. Official science tries to reassure people by calling this momentary mental blackout déjà vu. Neurologists attempting to place humanity back into a comfort zone swear that it is all nothing more than a silly, temporary glitch in a specific area of your brain. They claim that you recorded that moment straight into your long-term memory, bypassing short-term memory, which gives you the false impression that you are remembering something old, when in reality you are simply processing the present with a millisecond of delay. The central problem with this medical explanation is that it has completely collapsed. When the spikes in electrical activity recorded immediately before the episode were cross-referenced with the patient's brain patterns while they were deeply asleep on previous nights, the ultimate proof emerged. Déjà vu acts as a crystal-clear confirmation of future data synchronization. The analytical machine, Axiom, by cross-referencing the ocean of journals from people who religiously logged their dreams for decades with global news databases, revealed an abyss of predictability. People see the future, precisely 2 weeks before a catastrophic tragedy, be it a destructive earthquake, an abrupt plane crash, or a major attack. The measurements in the shared level of sleep explode chaotically. Thousands of individuals scattered across the globe, with no prior connection to one another, begin to describe identical nightmares about the same smells of smoke, collapsing structures, and desperate panic. They were there and walked through the wreckage of the tragedy days before the real world broadcast the event. This hidden mechanism of survival and collective warning operates through a physics of information that is impossible to ignore. You are transported into these temporal rifts to process dangerous possibilities. However, there is something more intimate than that. If there is the visualization of great catastrophes, there is also the bizarre flow of small broken things. Why would your brain spend valuable energy creating an intense dream where you drop your favorite blue cup, only for you to drop that same cup 2 days later in the exact same way you saw in your sleep? The shattered pieces scattered on the floor, and your frustration were rehearsed in secret. The explanation for the case of small, everyday predictions and survival warnings is etched into what we call the observer paradox, one of the most disturbing records of the project. An ordinary 42-year-old woman woke up in a cold sweat in the middle of the night after having an extremely realistic dream that she was hit on the right side of her car by a red truck at the very same intersection near her workplace. She could still hear the sound of the brakes tearing across the asphalt. The next morning, she took the exact same routine route. When she saw the intersection and the light was open and green for her to cross, déjà vu struck her body like a jolt of electricity. Breaking a daily, instinctive habit of proceeding on a green light, she slammed on her car's brakes with all her might. 1 second later, cutting through the street on a red light, the gigantic truck, identical to the one in her dream, blew past at extremely high speed. Did she change her future by deciding to brake the car? Or did she fulfill the role assigned to her when she received the warning in the middle of the night? If she had not received the visual shock of warning during her nocturnal crossing, the probability of her death was statistically inevitable. There is a colossal power manipulating fragments of time through our minds to ensure that you do not die before your time. Your life is tied by invisible strings so that the essential events are fulfilled. On the other hand, the server is not kind to greedy shortcuts. People receive false beacons and precise visions with the lottery numbers, only to wake up, run to the lottery agency and lose everything in real life. You were given a temporary pass to peek at the final pages of a parallel life where you had won. The stern warning is that the ordinary human mind goes insane when it tries to force the veil and bring back unauthorized data to try to change the course of the waters. The beauty of your existence only survives because you do not know how things end. If forgetting were not the rule, the burden of carrying the future would mute your essence and destroy any remnant of hope to carry on. You are running desperately in the darkness of an empty street or down a long corridor that seems to never end. At least your brain is screaming every possible command for your legs to move. Right behind you, the sound of heavy, dragging breathing gets closer and closer. You do not need to look over your shoulder to know that whatever is in the shadows is gaining ground. Fear turns your stomach. You try to make a final sprint, but the air around you suddenly turns into a sort of dense, transparent gelatin. Your legs weigh tons. Every step that should be an agile push converts into a slow, dragging movement, as if you were walking underwater wearing lead boots. The distance closes mercilessly. In an act of total desperation, you fill your lungs with air to scream for help, tense your throat, open your mouth, but no sound comes out. Only a weak, useless wheeze escapes your lips. You have been silenced. Still thrashing, you decide to turn around and face the predator, throwing your arms with all your might in a punch you swear is going to destroy what is in front of you. And then your fists turn to cotton. The impact is soft, weightless, and completely harmless. You are cornered, unable to run, unable to ask for help, and completely unable to fight back. For traditional psychology and for medicine, this terrifying sequence has a very simple explanation. They say that the inability to hit hard reflects your deep insecurity facing the challenges of daily life, while the sluggishness of your legs is merely the reflection of profound muscle relaxation happening in your physical body, lying in bed. It is a theater of comfortable excuses, created to hide what is truly happening in the back of your mind on the darkest nights. When Axiom Scan cross-referenced the biometric data of thousands of people in a state of absolute panic during the night with the brain's electrical command impulses, the answer that emerged did not point to a biological defect. You lose your strength and speed because there is a lock imposed on you. You have entered the nightmare sector, a zone meticulously designed to operate under rules of physical suppression. The environment around you detects your intention to flee and alters the local gravity specifically so that you can never escape the threat imposed by the plot too easily, but also so that the monster never catches you too quickly. This is classified as the dynamic braking protocol. The monstrous purpose behind this mechanic is to prolong the peak of anxiety for the maximum amount of time possible. Why would someone or something silence your voice in moments of panic? The rational explanation is so cold it borders on insane. Your scream is a high-frequency vibration, a shockwave that carries intention and brutal energy. A powerful yell could shatter the stability of the invisible walls of the stage where you are trapped. To preserve the theater and keep the panic under control, your audio channels are brutally cut, ensuring that you participate in the terror solely as a submissive victim. But all this infrastructure of pursuit, doors with latches that never work right, and corridors as suffocating as dark basements, has a clear primary objective that was extracted through biochemical analysis. During the climax of Night Terror, your heart races to 150 beats per minute. Adrenaline floods your blood as if a killer were in your bedroom, and the amount of glucose burned by your brain breaks records. If you cross-reference the gigantic amount of invisible energy your physical body generates on the mattress with the amount it actually expends to writhe and sweat cold, the math does not add up. There is a massive gap left over. Your panic is producing excess energy that no longer belongs to you. The nightmare is not a punishment for your sins, nor a passing anxiety disorder. It is a large-scale harvesting operation. We are the batteries that keep all this infrastructure existing. The creature chasing you does not want to tear your head off right away. It wants you to believe that death is near. Stress is the precious ore extracted from you in the early hours of the morning. This is the reason you wake up with a start, the exact millisecond the monster's teeth touch your neck, or in that very instant before your body hits the ground after a free fall. The connection is severed right at the apex of fear, ensuring that your maximum peak of energy has been generated. There is no profit in your imaginary death. There is continuous profit in the eternal repetition of your pain in humiliating social scenarios, where despair replaces the teeth of the beasts. This deep extraction dictates the secret rhythm of our own exhaustion and teaches, in the worst possible way, the rules of the invisible submission of existence. Look at your hands at this precise moment. Turn your palms up and count your fingers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Do you have unquestionable certainty that there are 5? Are you sure the lines on your skin are not moving subtly or transforming into something else entirely? Can you guarantee me that you are not sleeping right now? This is a classic reality check, a tool used by the aeronauts, the conscious travelers of dreams. In the precise instant that you, within a dream scenario, decide to look at your own hands and realize you have 6 fingers, or that they glow softly in the dark, something clicks in your head. An overwhelming wave of clarity activates the frontal part of your brain, and the definitive thought that you are dreaming takes over your mind. In that millisecond, the world around you transforms. The walls, once solid, can now be walked through. Gravity ceases to be a universal law and becomes an option you can turn off. You discover you can fly, that you can summon anyone from your life, living or dead, or raise an entire palace using only the strength of your will. You feel like an all-powerful god in your private universe, but you are not a god. You are a glitch in the structure, an anomaly that has just been detected by the guardians of the system. What happens when a marionette cuts its own strings and begins walking freely across the stage? Axiom upon analyzing the response patterns of the dream environment to these moments of sudden freedom revealed a disconcerting truth. The landscape is not passive. It reacts aggressively and immediately to try to suppress your consciousness. The first sign of retaliation is known as the dead stare effect. The most common advice among experienced dreamers is never, under any circumstances, to tell dream characters that they are not real. When you approach an extra, be it a friend or a stranger, and state, "This is a dream, you do not exist," the world freezes instantly. The noise of the street disappears. The character stops what they were doing, turns their face to you, and their expression becomes blank, robotic, devoid of any emotion. They simply stare. It is not a curious look. It is a cold, deep scan. And to your horror, all the other people around also stop and turn their heads in your direction, staring with the same empty intensity. Your declaration of autonomy triggered a silent alarm. The attention focus of the entire structure turns to you, trying to identify and neutralize the threat you represent. The sensation is of total panic, as if you had committed the worst imaginable crime. Frequently, the characters attack with an inhuman speed, or the dream simply unravels in a white flash, expelling you back to your bed with a racing heart and a throbbing headache. If you are strong enough to resist this first wave of defense, the structure changes tactics. It lays traps for your attention. The dream world becomes incredibly seductive and detailed, offering irresistible distractions based on your deepest weaknesses. Attractive people, delicious foods, objects of desire. The implicit message tries to convince you to relax and just enjoy the show, surrendering control. In 90% of cases, consciousness is lost in less than 3 minutes. But for the few who manage to navigate through these temptations, the final defense is triggered. It is a wake-up simulation, a false ending. You believe you have woken up in your bed. You get up, brush your teeth, and the feeling of relief is immense. You have lowered your guard, and then something strange happens. You turn on the faucet and the water comes out green, or the text on your phone changes every time you blink. The realization hits and the terror returns. You are still dreaming, This sequence can repeat dozens of times, trapping your consciousness in a labyrinth of fake bedrooms, a prison designed to exhaust your willpower until you give up. There is a real risk that in one of these layers, the loop may never break. Your mind can get trapped in an infinite loop while your physical body, in bed, enters a state that doctors cannot explain. This rebellion comes with a price. People who become masters at controlling their own dreams begin to lose interest in the physical world. Here, in the waking life, they are just ordinary people with bills to pay and limitations. There, they are kings. Reality becomes the boring dream they need to endure until they can go back to bed. It is a powerful addiction that erodes your connection to your own existence. But the deeper question remains. Who are the characters that inhabit these worlds? They can teach us things we did not know, like solving complex equations or speaking words in languages we never learned. This means they are not merely projections of our minds. They are terminals connected to a much larger network of information, and sometimes they whisper messages. Do not go that way. We are waiting for you. Warnings that we ignore, too distracted by our nocturnal flights. If you can wake up inside a dream and realize that everything around you is an illusion, who guarantees that we cannot do the exact same thing right now? Perhaps the physics of our world, with its particles that only exist when we observe them, is just the rule of a more stable and complex dream. Lucid dreaming might be the training for the true awakening. And when we master this skill, we will be able to bend the rules of this reality. But the question echoing in the darkness is, will the architects of this world allow so many of us to wake up? Medicine defines death in a brutally simple way. The heart stops beating, and the electrical activity in your brain ceases completely. The scientific consensus is that the screen goes blank and your consciousness dissolves into a dark and eternal silence. The machine is unplugged from the wall, and that is the end. But the evidence collected at the frontiers of human life tells an entirely different story. Death is not the end of the broadcast. It is your definitive conclusion, the final and most important data upload of your existence. When we cross-reference thousands of brain scans performed on patients at the precise moments they were declared dead, with the patterns of people immersed in the deepest dreamless sleep, the correlation was 99%. The brain does not shut down in a slow, tired sigh. On the contrary, in the final seconds of life, it fires the most potent wave of energy ever recorded, a spike of gamma activity that defies biology. Doctors call this the agony of the neurons. The cold, calculating analysis of Axiom, however, views this phenomenon as an emergency transfer protocol. Your consciousness, your memory, your personality, everything you call I, is compressed and sent through the very same channel you use every night to cross the veil. The only difference is that this time, it is a one-way ticket. The tunnel of light that people report is not an hallucination caused by a lack of oxygen. It is the visual interface of the transfer channel, the loading screen that leads straight to the main lobby of that white station, the place you have been visiting for years without remembering. Those who return from this journey often say that the colors there are more vivid and the thoughts clearer, that place feels more real than our own world. This is because our reality here on Earth is a limited version, with restrictions on physics and perception. Death is the act of finally taking off the dark glasses and seeing the full light. So why are we here? Why abandon a place of infinite possibilities to voluntarily lock ourselves in a cage of flesh and bone for 80 years? Remember the exact sensation of waking up today in the morning. The alarm rings, and the first sensation you have is of an overwhelming weight. Gravity pins you to the bed. Your body feels heavy and clumsy, and your thoughts flow with the sluggishness of a river of tar. That is not laziness. It is the shock of decompression. It is what a diver feels when pulled up too fast from the depths. Your physical body is not you. It is a biological suit, a heavy diving suit that your consciousness must wear to interact with this dense and aggressive environment. We came to this world of entropy, where everything breaks, ages, and dies because we are gatherers. Your true essence, free and limitless, needs a type of experience that cannot be found over there. It needs to feel the pain of loss to understand the value of love. It needs to know the fear of death to give meaning to life. We came to this plane to collect the rarest and most valuable type of data in the universe, the pure emotions born from struggle and overcoming. And for this collection to be authentic, your memory of home needs to be blocked. If you knew you were in a safe game, you would not be afraid of the monsters. Therefore, upon birth, we forget. We only feel a deep longing for a place we do not know how to name. Now that you know this, look at your life through different eyes, the difficult boss, the bills to pay, the crises that shake the world. They are just part of the scenery, the difficulty levels of your personal game. Do not fear them, play with them. When you understand that you are in a training camp, fear loses its power, and you begin to improvise, to appreciate the journey, even in the most difficult moments. Your entire journey on this plane fulfills a specific strategic mission. Therefore, live and feel every moment. Embrace the pain, celebrate the love, face the fear. That is what you came for. It is your job. Soon, you will lie down to sleep. You will close your eyes and your mental frequency will change. The connection with this heavy suit will be interrupted, and somewhere, perhaps in a quiet room or in the bright lobby of the White Station, your true eyes will open. You will stretch and think, wow, what a strange and heavy dream I had about a place called Earth. I am so glad I finally woke up. If you liked this investigation, subscribing to the channel helps us expand the Axiom Investigation project. We would love to read your thoughts on the video's subject in the comments and your suggestion for the next topic to be covered. Tell us which city you are watching from. Thank you for staying with us until the end.